Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Ice Sheet Survival series. In the last episode we defeated a huge pirate raid, attacked a pirate colony ourselves and completed our first operation, so we start this episode off with a lung, a liver and a heart inside of our storage room, not to mention the masterwork hospital bed and the uranium plate armor that we received as a reward for completing a quest last time. In today's episode we will, among other things, once again focus on recruiting our prisoner here. We have brought his resistance down to 0, so now all recruitment attempts actually have a chance of succeeding, and we'll hopefully get that over with soon. The general mood in our small ice sheet colony could be better at the moment. All the organ harvesting in the last episode has left our colonists a bit stressed, so for the first few days in this episode we'll try not to push them too hard. We are also nearing the end of summer, by the way, so temperatures are soon going to drop again, but this is not our first winter rodeo, and I would say the colony is well prepared. As always though, there is still some room to improve, and today we start with the hydroponics farm. Not only are we going to turn all available basins back on and have them planted, we are also going to construct additional ones in the spots where we still have room. I held off on that for now because we had some trouble acquiring new steel, but at the moment we have plenty and this ensures that our food production runs at maximum efficiency. I was also informed in the comments of the last episode that we have a small natural hiding spot right next to our entrance, where enemies could potentially seek cover from our turrets. From what we've seen so far, they are unlikely to actually go there, but let's remove that possibility anyway and optimize our defenses even further. Cobra has also just rebuilt the door leading into our trapped corridor, so now we can once again block enemies from skipping the first section of traps, which is admittedly not that big of a benefit at the moment, because we only have one single stone trap constructed over there. In the meantime, Cobra himself is heading over to the prison for the next recruitment session, and let's see if he's already successful this early on. And indeed he is, and with that our colony has grown once again and we have recruited our very first prisoner. Now of course the guy needs a new name, and as always I picked one randomly from the patron naming rights tier. And the name I came up with was Nathan from patron Nathan Haw. So Nathan, welcome to the colony. I hope you like it here and can look past the occasional act of cannibalism, organ harvesting or whatever else we can come up with. Just as a refresher now, a quick look at Nathan's skill set here. He is good with a weapon and will likely also spend a lot of time farming, and if we need him to, he should be serviceable as a backup doctor behind Giraffe, and he might even put a few hours in at the research bench whenever Cambia is not using it. For the moment though, our very first priority is to get him dressed, because in order to survive out in the cold he needs something a bit warmer than just a cloth t-shirt. His new temperature resistance of minus 48 degrees Celsius is alright for the time being, but once winter comes around we want to improve that a bit further, probably with a higher quality parka. For now he is good to go though, and as you can see we have already begun constructing him a place to sleep. We're using the old hospital for that, even though old is a bit of a stretch considering how we dug out the place just 2 episodes ago, but it has a good size for a bedroom and we save some time this way. By the way, with Nathan now recruited and hopefully surviving until the end of the episode, I'm going to update the t-shirt design once again. The Arctic Fox that we're currently training is already on there, and Nathan will receive his spot as well. While the bedroom construction work is making good progress, Cambia has also started researching again. We are still trying to unlock the vitals monitor to upgrade our hospital, and the project is roughly 2/3 completed at this point, so we should see its completion in a few days. In the meantime, Antonio and Nathan get to know each other over some farm work, but for Nathan's first day out in the fields, Randy already has something in store. A blight has infested a good portion of our crops, and to avoid losing an entire harvest, we now need to cut off all the sick plants before the blight can spread. Now, alternatively, we could also just let the plants die. The majority is fast-growing rice that has just been planted, but this way we actually get a few skill points in the plant skill for both colonists. And especially with Antonio, that is somewhat important because we want him to get up to level 8 as fast as possible, because that unlocks Heal Root as a plant, which we can then turn into herbal medicine. In the afternoon then, the blight is taken care of. We still have a few empty spots in the basins, but our 2 farmers will get right on that. Nathan's bedroom has also been fully constructed already. Next to a bed and some furniture, he also has a nice sculpture, making this a decent but pretty bedroom, and that's good enough for now. Just as we queue up the construction of one more hydroponics basin, we then have a group of Cougars pass by. Now, Cougars can potentially be very useful animals. They can be trained to haul and have a very high carrying capacity, and they still consume much less food than a husky. However, they are also very tough to tame and train, so we're not going for that at this point. Since Cougars are also fairly large animals, however, they yield a solid amount of meat and leather. And with Nathan being a good shooter in need of some target practice, I think we'll make him our designated sniper specialist and send him and Cambia out on a quick hunting trip. We only have 3 animals to take care of here, we have superior range, and if things get rough we can always flee back into the base, so I think we should be fine. The first few shots immediately connect and leave the Cougars bleeding, however, despite being rather aggressive animals, they don't retaliate immediately. Instead, we can take our time to pick them off one by one, and since no animal can survive against bullets and lasers, the Cougars fall quickly. Just as the last one goes down, the ice sheet then once again shows us that for every death there can be new life, with our husky Madeline giving birth. And I don't think we're going to slaughter this puppy immediately. Instead, we'll rename her after patron Skippy, and then give her a sleeping spot among the other animals and wait for a trader to pass by that we can sell her to. We're also doing some work to beautify the base a bit more. A bit of wall smoothing should make Giraffe's bedroom and the corridor leading to Nathan's quarters slightly more pleasant to look at. Giraffe herself, meanwhile, has hauled back the last remaining cougar corpse and can now flick off both of the coolers. Summer is officially over now, and that means we are no longer risking infestations due to high temperatures, so cooling is no longer necessary. While we're at it, we can also turn off the lamp and the heater in the hospital. At the moment they only waste electricity. Our huskies have once again gone through their food supplies quickly, so we can now see Cobra prepare more pemmican, while Antonio gets ready for colder temperatures by switching his helmet for a warm toque. Afterwards he can continue putting down traps, but even though we have a bit more steel now, these first 2 lines of defense will remain stone traps simply because they are used quite frequently. While Antonio is building, Cambia has been busy at the research bench, and we have now unlocked the vitals monitor. This handy device improves several functions of the hospital bed, namely the success chance of operations, the quality of medical treatments, and the speed with which patients gain immunity. Needless to say, it is a very useful item, and since it can be connected to several medical beds at once, we will construct one immediately. It has to be within 1 tile of a bed to connect, however, unlike the workbench for example, so efficient placement is important. Also, don't make the same mistake I did and forget that the monitor needs to be connected to the power grid to work, which made a slight redecoration of the hospital necessary. While Cambia was hauling furniture around, we also had the next husky birth, and this time we have twins. For the names, we go with Benjamin after patron Benjamin Buxbaum, and with James after James McGuire. Both of them will once again be restricted to our animal shelter, where they can wait for a trader to pass by who wants to buy them. Shortly after, Giraffe finishes another sculpture named Image for Cobra, a sculpture that bears the image of Cobra wielding a mortar, roaring in victory and driving away a dentist's. Yes, dentists. If anyone wants to give that image a try, feel free. I can hardly imagine what it might look like. In any case, the galaxy is probably not ready for it yet, and so we'll put the sculpture in our farming area to strike fear into the hearts of rice and potatoes, and of course also to make the area a bit more beautiful. Giraffe can now take a break from sculpting and take care of our steel reserves. I have a few smaller projects planned that all need steel, and of course having a decent supply never hurts. No longer busy with research, Cambia meanwhile does some tailoring. I mentioned earlier that Nathan could use a warm alpaca, and that is now exactly what Cambia is fabricating alongside 2 warm alpaca wool toques. It doesn't take long until the parka is finished and Nathan can come over to put it on right away, improving his temperature resistance by a whopping 22 degrees to minus 70 degrees Celsius. Cambia meanwhile has already finished the first toque and can now switch his marine helmet for it, which also makes him a bit more prepared for the colder days ahead of us. The second toque here is then not needed immediately, but I think it's good to have one in reserve, in case one becomes tattered or we have another colonist join us during the winter. In the afternoon then we can see Antonio haul a few animal corpses to the butcher table. This will make some room in our corpse storage and provide us with a new supply of meat, which we could use since, at least for the moment, we now have 7 hungry huskies and the nutrient paste dispenser is also half empty. With the slaughtering of 2 buffalo corpses, however, the problem is quickly solved and we once again have plenty of meat to keep the colony fed for a while. Our steel reserves are also looking much better now, and so as night sets across the ice sheet, I would say things are going pretty well so far. And as if Randy heard me say that, he sends a small gift our way in the form of 2 drop pods containing some plasteel. Not an overly valuable drop by any means, but it's close to our base and the steel slag chunks from the pods can be smelted down later, so we'll make sure to grab everything and bring it back to the base. Over the course of the night then, we had Cobra make some more pemmican while Giraffe started working on the stonecutter's table, but all in all, things remained quiet until the morning. And that is where we now continue with some research. We are making good progress on the medical side of things, so I think it's only fitting to research prosthetics next. Prosthetic body parts are not really what I'm after though, they are not as efficient as their natural counterparts, but this research project is necessary to unlock bionics, and that is where things get a lot more interesting. For now though, we can focus on prosthetics first. The project should be easy enough to complete for Cambia. While the research is underway, we can also do some more work around the defenses, and I think it's about time we add a few additional turrets. At the moment, I'm not quite sure if it's a good idea to place them directly opposite to the ones we already have, as that might cause a lot of friendly fire, so we'll start with 2 at the bottom right here. They are squeezed a bit more tightly together, but I think this will work just fine. And of course, down the line, we might expand the setup a bit as enemy numbers increase. For the moment though, we have much more pressing issues. A large group of Manhunting fennec foxes has found their way onto the ice sheet, and they are closing in on the base quickly. Temperatures are just warm enough for them to survive out here at the moment, so we actually have to deal with them, and I admit it took me a while to come up with a good strategy. Since foxes are very quick, we probably won't have enough time to close the outer door before they reach it, so we'll have to seal the base off another way, and the easiest solution here is to simply have Antonio construct a plasteel door. At the same time, our animals will run into safety and Nathan will open the door on the other side of the base, which hopefully causes the foxes to run over there. Luckily, the door is constructed just in time and the foxes suffer some casualties from our traps before the rest of the group decides to turn around and head for the other entrance. And that is exactly what I wanted, because I don't want them to run around on this side of the base, as we have all of our traps here, and a group like this could easily trigger most, if not all of them, which would be a colossal waste of resources. On the other side of the base, we will of course also make sure that no fox actually makes it inside, but the foxes can do far less damage over here. A few still remain at the main entrance, and I think we will inevitably lose a trap or 2, but we could have lost much more, so this is by far the more preferable outcome. For the time being, we are now effectively locked in, but at least the mood doesn't suffer as Randy hits us with a nice psychic soothe. Once again, Giraffe is exempt from the effects, but Cambia, Cobra, Antonio, and especially the hypersensitive Nathan all get large mood bonuses. Giraffe, meanwhile, is making a bit more camp fuel, as we are currently bringing in a lot more rice and potatoes than we can consume, and I think we'll also soon switch over to a vegetarian diet with the nutrient paste dispenser, simply to avoid clogging up the kitchen. Our defense upgrade has now been completed. The only thing still missing is some power for the turrets, but Cobra takes quick care of that. The 2 new turrets are now also connected to the same switch as the other 3, so we can still flick them all on and off as needed. With all foxes on this side of the base dead and the rest busy on the opposite entrance, we can also rush Cobra over to our outer door and close it. This way we can now continue working on the traps in peace, even though we lure the animals back over to this side. As the foxes return, the door itself is taking some damage, but luckily it holds and we can fix things later with a few minutes of repair work. Just as Cobra is finished rebuilding the steel traps, Cambia completes his research project, and so we now have access to prosthetics. Once again though, they are more of an emergency option, so let's immediately continue with bionics, a project that will take slightly longer to complete. The rest of the day then passes by without any major occurrences, until shortly after midnight we have a group of tribal traders arrive on the ice sheet. Now, unfortunately, we also still have a few manhunting foxes running around, so we cannot exactly greet them with open doors. Instead, we have to time this carefully and wait until all hostile foxes are occupied, or ideally dead. Luckily though, we have a more or less free path over to the caravan, so let's trade quickly before things get ugly. First of all, we will send our 3 husky puppies, Skippy, Benjamin and James, with the traders. They will now hopefully live a good life elsewhere on this planet. We are also selling some ambrosia and an old t-shirt before we make a potentially very useful purchase for Nathan. The psychic foil helmet here reduces psychic sensitivity by 90%, which can very effectively counteract Nathan's hypersensitivity trait in case of a malicious psychic drone. This more or less neutralizes the negative aspects of the trait, while still allowing us to reap the benefits of a psychic soothe, just as we're doing right now. I have also made the decision to sell the uranium plate armor we obtained last episode, simply because it is not really suitable for our playstyle out here on the ice sheet. Not only does it come with a pretty hefty movement speed penalty, but it also barely protects against the cold and will therefore very likely only be a viable option during summertime, and even then only in combat and not for everyday use. All in all though, our colonists are doing quite well with their current parka outfits, and with the price this armor fetches us, I think selling is the better option at the moment. We are also buying a few doses of herbal medicine, just so the trader actually has enough silver to afford everything, and then we complete the deal and hope the foxes don't get in our way. With the helmet in hand, Cobra makes it back to the base in one piece, while the traders briefly scuffle with the last man-hunting fox before the cold temperatures then force them to move on. The remaining animals have all calmed down again and will now also leave, so we can safely haul all the goods back behind our defenses. Just as we do, we have another cargo drop. This time 8 fine meals land right next to our main entrance, and of course we'll gladly take them as well. The next event is also just around the corner, and once again it's our friends from Gutra Mountain who call on us with a trade request. They want a shipment of 7 bolt-action rifles and would be willing to hand over an orbital bombardment targeter as well as 2 tech-proof sub-persona cores. Now, we already have one of those targeters from an earlier quest, but the sub-persona cores are quite interesting. When used, they immediately complete the current research project, especially for some of the longer projects that could be immensely helpful, even though we have already completed all the Starship research. Now we have 28 days to think about this offer, so there is no need to rush things, and as always I would like to hear what you think about it. The 7 rifles would cost us quite a bit of steel and components, and we might actually also have to complete one more research project to actually be able to manufacture them, but the reward is once again very lucrative. So as always, let me know what you would like us to do in the comments below. The psychic foil helmet meanwhile is carried over to Nathan's bedroom, that way he always has it on hand and we don't accidentally sell it off. Accompanied by the message that Ruby is once again pregnant, Nathan himself can now relieve Cambia of his research duties for a while, because Cambia will fire up the fabrication bench for the very first time. To eventually build the starship that gets us off this planet, we need a lot of advanced components, and at the moment we don't have nearly enough. So by combining steel, components, plus steel and gold, Cambia will now manufacture a few of those advanced components, and since a crafting skill of 8 is required to do so, he is sadly also the only person in the colony who can take care of this task. With the first component finished, we now have 10 of them in our storage room, but to launch the ship, even with only one single colonist on board, we would need at least 42, so we still have a long way to go. And that is actually a topic that I would like to discuss briefly while the episode is slowly coming to an end. As you all know, this series has now been going on for well over a year. And while it is still enjoyable for you and for me as well, I'm slowly starting to get the feeling that after close to 50 episodes, we might want to work towards the end. Now, that does not necessarily have to mean that there won't be any more Rimworld content on this channel, it would simply mean that this series right here, this Ice Sheet Challenge, has been completed. I also know that we are still quite a few steps away from being able to build and launch the ship, but so far we also haven't really worked too hard to accomplish that. However, we could of course focus much more on that shipbuilding project, because apart from the advanced components, all the other materials won't be too hard to get, especially since we already have more than enough uranium as well as an AI persona core. So this would be another question to you guys: how do you feel about kind of jumping into the endgame soon? And maybe to the veterans among you, do you think we're ready for that, or will the activation of the ship reactor be too much to handle for us? Keep in mind that we have kept colony wealth fairly low up until this point, which hopefully makes raids a bit less difficult to deal with. The end of today's episode then requires one more use of the patron naming rights tier, as a group of huskies wanders in and joins the colony. Now, we just sold off 3 puppies, and these 3 here will likely suffer the same fate soon, but at least for now we can give them new names. And those names are Anaka, after patron Anaka Unknown, Vlarto, and Kim, after patron Kim Berkeland. And as we watch Anaka, Vlarto, and Kim make their way over to our small ice sheet colony, we can wrap up today's episode. I left you with a few questions, and I would be happy to hear what you think about the trade offer and about the overall state of the colony. And if you want to, you can of course also try your hand at recreating that image of Cobra and the 8 dentists. As a flash storm now strikes down far away from our base, we make the cut. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be happy if you could leave a thumbs up. If you like what I'm doing and want to support the channel further, then you can of course also subscribe or support the Pete Complete Patreon, and who knows, maybe your name will be picked for the next animal or colonist that joins us. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.